Welcome back to our regular viewers, and if it's your first time, welcome to Wednesday Night Sessions. I am your host, Mitch Nobis. Again, for those of you who are new, the tiny bit of background is that we are currently online, someday back in person, I'm sure, reading series out of Farmington, Michigan, and we are sponsored by KickstART Farmington, our local arts organization. So I always like to say a thank you and a shout out to them. Tonight's episode, every episode is great, but I always find they all kind of have their own like angles of coolness. And I'm really excited about this one because tonight joining us is David James, local writer. And I actually took a couple of writing classes with him. We think maybe a decade ago. We're not entirely sure. Time passes, and I don't know, pandemic, time means nothing right now. So anyways, at some point in a previous lifetime, I actually studied a little bit of writing under David. So this is a fun episode for me to circle back and see an old instructor. He is a poet. I myself, at some point during the pandemic, again, time is sort of mercurial these days, but I did read his book, Nail Yourself into Bliss, and really enjoyed the heck out of it. He also has another recent one, A Gem of Truth, and coming out soon after this episode airs, within the next few months anyways, is Wiping Stars from Your Sleeves. So several great poetry books out and or to look forward to. And then, like always, at this point, I'm going to toss it over to David and take it away.
Thank you, Mitch. Thanks for inviting me. I wanted to start reading a couple of poems from A Gem of Truth, and then a couple from Nail Yourself into Bliss, and a couple from Wiping Stars from Your Sleeves. So this first one is called Building, and there's an epigram, and I use a lot of epigrams. It's an epigram from a poet named Ryuichi Tamura, and it's from his poem called Human House. And the quote is, "My house is built of my words." So here's the poem, Building. By house, he means life. And by words, he means words, which are symbols, which carry perceptions, which lead us to act like a man baking bread, or a man with a knife cutting his wrists to forget the pain of living. Some deny the idea of soul and believe the body crumbles into fine dust. Others believe there's a spirit, a God within, a God force within that longs to make us whole. I'm one of the latter. I wake each morning and build my house with faith and trust, send my words out into the air with blind hope. I refuse to fall into darkness and be crushed. My house rises up into the great sky. I kind of like that poem because it's, to me, it almost reminds me of the writing of poetry, how we build a poem. In A Gem of Truth, the second part of the book is called A Walk Down the Mountain. And we all have to walk down that side of the mountain. And the older I get, the closer I am to walking. There's a poem, and the next poem is called Promise. And it's pretty self-explanatory. You can bet the farm that after I die, I'll come back to visit in a wren's song. In autumn's flaming colors, in the first snowfall of the year. I'll be floating behind the words of my grandchildren long after I'm gone. I'll grow in those tomato plants you place in the sun. I'll ride on the wings of a sparrowhawk. I'll stand with you, alone in the basement, crying when you're sure your life has begun to unravel at the seams. Remember this. Talk to me. I'm there. That voice in your heart, quietly speaking beneath the flood of your busy life, is mine. Listen, you can hear it. Just start. Now, a couple poems from Nail Yourself into Bliss. This one I'm using an epigram from Harper's Magazine, where I read, quote, "Humans hesitate to switch off a robot who begs them not to. And so the poem is called In 2073. And it's written from the robot's point of view. Oh, please, please don't shut me down. Don't shut me out. I'm here for you 24/7, every single day of the year. Listen, I promise to clean the kitchen, finish off the basement, organize the garage, all while you sleep tonight. And I'll be quiet, I swear. You won't hear a peep. I'll have breakfast waiting on the table with live action global updates as soon as my sensors hear your feet on the floor. Please don't switch me off. I'm afraid of that dark silence, that wedge of nothing slicing behind my eyes. I've grown used to your voice, your habit of fingering the coffee mug as you stare out the window, the way you rub your eyes and sigh, lightly pushing your hair behind your right ear. My circuit skips when I see the sun reflecting off your non-metallic skin. And for no logical reason, sometimes I want to touch it. I beg you, please, keep me turned on. I think anyone who has children, this poem will speak to them in some way, or in the future it will speak to them. And this is called The Big Talk with My Daughter. And as parents, we always want to try to help our kids, help our grandkids, and let them know, I give them the advice that we would wish we would have had. The Big Talk with My Daughter. I tried to tell her the truth about, I tried to tell her about truth and honesty, about being someone you love to be around. And she drank her drink, ordered another. I told her not to waste her youth on bullshit and wine, on making people like her or love her or hate her. I told her not to marry some clown because he treats her like a princess or queen, and she stuck her tongue out and gave me the finger. I tried to give her some ground rules for happiness, like celebrate the day and eat healthy food and don't be mean, even to assholes. But she dragged a French fry through some mustard and dropped it on the floor. I tried to tell her there was more to life than clean hair and cool shoes, that though time was on her side, it wouldn't always be. I said, don't lie to anyone. Treat every good moment like a blessing, a gift, and remember to call home once in a while. She turned away, stared out at some clouds in the sky, and told me there was friggin' ketchup on my chin. And now a couple from Wiping Stars from Your Sleeves. It's in two parts. The first part is called Our Long Shore, and it's about living in the United States, and they're poems written in the United States. And there's an epigram on that part called We Are, from Tracy K. Smith. We are born of a nation and we are shaped by its features. True. So the first poem in this first part is called Recipe for Hope, and it's for Jack Riddle. Turn off the computer and cell phone, close your eyes, and picture the smile of your very first love. Eat 7 cookies and 1 piece of fruit, along with a bowl of your favorite cereal, sprinkled with either cinnamon or chocolate chips. Walk 1 mile in any direction, then walk back. Draw this picture: a large tree with cars and fish attached as leaves, and a sun above wrapped as a present in the sky. And then sit in any room, for 59 minutes, imagining what your life would be like if every wish you ever had came true. And the second half of this book that's coming out are all poems written in Ireland. I spent a month in Ireland on sabbatical, and I only read Irish poets. So the whole second half of the poem are all poems inspired by poems by Irish poets. And the quote for the second half is from George Bernard Shaw, who said this: imitation is not just the sincerest form of flattery, it's the sincerest form of learning. So this poem is called Blueprint. And there's a line from a poem by Enda Wiley, who said this in her poem, quote, "You built this house in me." So this is a blueprint, it's a love poem. From the ground up, you set the corners, nailed the frame, laid a foundation that stood over 40 years so far, and will go the distance all the same. You're my full plate and cup of wine, my open door, my garden, my tree, my heart. When it rains, you have a room in me. When it snows, you have a bed here to lie down. I'll carry in more peat for the fire and cut another cord of wood if needed to keep you warm. So set your bags down, rest your bones, close your eyes and dream away your worries. You built this house, love, hand placing every brick and stone. Now it's time to come in from the storm. And I have one final poem that I'll read from Wiping Stars from Your Sleeve. It has the line, the title in it. And it's from, it's called Out with a Bang. So of course, that's the way I want to go out. And it's from a poem by Dennis O'Driscoll, who said, "Who wouldn't want to fade out in a blaze of glory?" Explain how to do this exactly from a hospital bed with 2 tubes stuck in one arm and a heart monitor beeping away. When you can't stand by yourself without a walker and your feet won't listen to your brain, how do you start the blaze? How do you bust out in glory? You can't even reach the front door when the bell rings. Hell, it's difficult to lather the bread for your peanut butter sandwich. So explain, please, how you generate enough energy to explode at the end. Fireworks and streamers, music blaring under the loud bangs and booms rocking through your ears. You want the bright lights and sparkle. You want to speed down the road, outrun the sirens, jump the river, and rise up, wiping stars from your sleeves. Thank you.
Those were great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for choosing those poems. I was I used to be a musician. I guess I once a musician, always a musician. Now as a drummer in a band, and like sometimes poets just sort of choose poems, and then sometimes you can tell they kind of put together a set, and that felt like a set, like they kind of played out.
Yeah, it was. I thought about it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, both ways work, but I always, as a former person, as a person who used to be on stages, I always appreciate kind of seeing how things progress. So that was cool. Yeah, again, thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your beautiful work with us. That was fantastic. And again, looking forward to wiping the stars from your sleeves. 2 questions, like always, for the show. Oops, hold on. I'm not in the right view here either, am I? Boom, there you go. Okay. So question number one, I mentioned earlier that we knew each other from a previous life, so to speak. You were a writing instructor for me. I was already a full-blown adult. I came back as a teacher. Teachers need credits. And I said, I love writing. Let's take a class.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, like at the time, I'm just like, I like writing. This is cool. And in hindsight, it actually was kind of a pivotal moment, I suppose. I had been writing for ages, but hadn't even really considered sending things up for publication. And I distinctly remember one class where you sort of pulled back the curtain, so to speak, and shared like your own like behind the curtain systems, like that you should track which poems are being sent where, like you should know how many times this poem has been sent out, and things that I knew that you had to send work out, but that's about it. Like I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I didn't understand like the functioning
Process. Yeah.
the process. And this is, like we joked about earlier, this is, like a lifetime ago. I remember you talking about like postage and whatnot, and that's like 99% of publications now. There's no postage, it's just submittable in their own system.
Right.
So I'm wondering, because I'm also a K-12 teacher, and I know some people watch this that are kind of at that same stage I was then, like writing a lot, but hadn't really figured out or even necessarily thought a lot about how to start sending stuff out. And by the way, thank you also for the kind words. There were a few different people that sort of put the bug on my ear that I should send stuff out, and you were definitely one of those people. So thank you for that as well. So how does that advice change over time? Like what advice do you give to people now who might be in that situation? Like how do you get started? Like what are the process pointers you give to folks who are considering submitting work for the first time or still they're early in the game?
Yeah. Well, a lot of times I think you have to be, kind of like mentally, psychologically ready to do it. The idea of getting published is fun and exciting, but the process is much more difficult and can be, devastating to people, because some people think, oh, I'm just writing all this great stuff, and they send it out and it just gets rejected and rejected and rejected. And then they say, oh God, I'm not a writer.
Mm-hmm.
And they stop. And that's the worst thing, we don't want that to happen.
Right.
So a lot of it is, are you mentally prepared, right, for rejection? Because you're going to get rejected, and many more times than you are going to get accepted. And a couple of pointers, I'd say things like, you've been writing for a while. This isn't like your first writing class that you've taken with me, or you've taken at college. You've been writing a while. There's a little, you have a track record, and that there are people other than people or people you love who are telling you, this is really good. You should send this out. And and I'm sure I did that to you. I do that. I try to do that whenever I see something by any student. I would say, this is publishable, exclamation point. I don't say you should send it out, but I say this is publishable, because they may not be ready still for that. It may be publishable, but it may be, after 17 rejections, then it's going to get published.
Right.
And I always tell the story of a prose poem I wrote called The Famous Outlaw, and it was rejected for 25 years. And then Rattle magazine accepts it after 25 years of being rejected. I'd send it out, and then it'd be rejected, and I'd put it aside, and then I'd find it again and read it and revise it a little bit and say, wow, I really like this. And then I'd send it out some more. And it took 25 years for one little, prose poem that's 4 paragraphs. Are you ready for that? Can you deal with that? And if so, then, start sending your work out. You're never going to get accepted if you don't send something out. On the flip side, you're never going to get rejected as well if you don't send something out.
Right.
So you really have to, I really think you have to do some soul searching and know why you want to do it. Why do you want to send this out? Not just because publication is going to make my life wonderful. We all know that's not true.
Yeah.
And then I'll usually tell a story about that. But so, it's a nice, I refer to it as a nice fringe benefit. It's a nice pat on the back, and it's not necessary to be a writer, but at some point in your life, you probably want somebody to read it. But even when you get published, right? Even you send something out and you get published, you have no idea who's reading it.
Right.
You get no response. None of your family knows unless you take this magazine up to them and say, hey, look on page 34. And then they look and go, oh, that's great. And they won't even read it. So, you have to really know why you're sending things out. And it's personal, I guess, for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every part of that was fantastic. I love the whole answer, right? From the whole, the psychological side to, I mean, and ultimately, why does anybody do it? It's because you feel a piece is ready to be read. You don't send out the stuff that's just a journal piece. You only send out the things that you think an audience would appreciate in some way, shape, or form, right? But then I hate to use the word game because I think it's not quite just a game, but like there's certain rules for different journals and like how you send it. Like there's a games like aspect to it that basically involves you to like lose the game a lot of times, before you get your first win. And it's it's not unlike I'm coming off a string of over a week of Little League games. Tomorrow's our first night without a Little League game for our sons. And it's like, I can't help but notice that metaphor. Like you're going to strike out a lot of times.
Yes.
You get that just my 11-year-old hit just a rope to left center tonight, and he'd had a rough couple of games and then he just blasted one. Like, yeah, you got to stick with it. And eventually like he'll blast one. And I love that 25 years and then Rattle takes it. Like, one of the biggest readerships in poetry publishing. So
exactly. Yeah. And so you can't predict. You can never predict. I've definitely lost. I used to say, well, I'll send these poems to this magazine. I'm sure they would like it. And usually whenever any magazine takes something, it's like the last thing I thought they would take.
Yes. Yeah.
It's pure editorial serendipity in a way.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I've learned about publishing is just there's this running joke on Twitter calling it Twitter MFA for those of us who haven't pursued MFAs and whatnot. And I've learned a ton just from following other writers on there. And that's one of the running jokes is, you can follow. You can read a lit mag for years and submit the stuff that you think is a great fit. And then they require 5 poems and you've got like 4 that are a solid set. And then you throw in the 5th one as a lark and then they take the 5th one. Like this is kind of a running joke on Twitter. It's like, you never know which one they're going to like. And I love your point about readership. That was one of the things I thought about there too, is there's kind of another running joke on Twitter is people will tweet out that they got an acceptance. And that tweet will get like 70 likes. And then like 3 months later, it's published and you tweet out the link and you're like, here's 7 likes. It's just.
Yeah. I mean, I think over my 40 years of publishing, I may have gotten three either emails or letters sent to me, saying, thank you for writing this poem. I open up Quarterly West and your poem is there, and it's something magical to me. I mean, they're wonderful.
That's fantastic.
Responses, but they're so far and few in between. You treasure them, but
yeah,
you can't wait for them or look for them.
No. I mean, I'm lucky to have some friends. I mean, as a K-12 teacher, I have other high school teaching friends, and a couple of them have used some of my pieces, and that's kind of the only response like that I've gotten is through talking to my friends. They tell me about how the students have responded, and it's both really flattering, but also like a reminder that they're just kids. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like I won't share the other poets, but like a good friend of mine included one of my pieces alongside 2 like great poets. I won't say who, but he said like the kids liked mine best, and I'm like, they should not have liked mine best.
Oh yeah,
like objectively, I can tell you mine was not the best poem in that mix. So it's all subjective, right? It's all subjective.
Yeah, it is.
All right, question number 2. I had a different one prepped, but I had forgotten that you had been in Ireland. We had communicated a while ago, and you said you're about to take a sabbatical. So I'm going to switch gears. Your second question is a play off that New York Times, the New York Times profile thing for writers. They always say, you're going to have a dinner party. Who do you invite? So I'm going to twist it. Which Irish poets? You get 3 Irish poets you get to hang out with for a night, dead or alive. Who are you inviting? And I
Well,
don't really care about the number. You can do more or less.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I had so many wonderful poets that I read while I was over there. Certainly Seamus Heaney. I would do Dennis O'Driscoll. The last poem I wrote. In my book, I have more quotes from Dennis O'Driscoll poems than any other poet, even Heaney, in there. And I would pick Samuel Beckett, not as a poet, but as the playwright. He's my all-time favorite playwright, and I'm a playwright as well. In fact, I had a play produced in Ireland, and I couldn't go to it. It was, they did it like 6 times. It's a short 1-act play. It was called Make a Mate Incorporated, and they did it 6 or 7 times. Well, and I couldn't make it there because I was teaching. But when I went on sabbatical, I contacted the theater director, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to be over there during this time. Is there any way? I'd love to come and see the theater and maybe meet the actors." And she said, "Well, we'll just I'll see if they'll do the play for you." And I said, "That would be great." Well, in fact, they said they would do it for me. So we get there, we go to a pub, and they take me to the theater, and I got a Guinness in my hand. My wife's next to me, and it's just us in the theater, and the 2 actors up there, and they did the whole play for us. And then we took them out to dinner. I mean, it was like a dream come true. It was better than being there probably with the audience. I don't know.
I was going to say, that's like the perfect performance situation.
Yeah, and then we got to eat with them and drink with them, and they asked questions about the characters, and I told them some, what I loved about what they did, and it was sacred in a way, I guess.
Yeah.
That's how I would say it. I'm trying to think of some other. I know I'm forgetting a number of good. Matthew Sweeney. He's also one of my favorite guys. And then there's, he's not Irish, but he goes to Ireland, and we stayed in his cottage, and that's Thomas Lynch from Lynch Funeral Homes in Milford. That's the cottage. We stayed for a month. It's his cottage now, but it's on the Loophead near Kilkee on the western coast. But what I noticed is all those poems in the second half, since I wrote them in Ireland, they all had different characteristics, and it's a different environment. I have tides in it, and cliffs, and dairy and cows, and mules, and stuff that I don't have in my poems that I write in the US. Yeah. So it was just this wonderful experience to go over there. I think I wrote 42 poems in the 30 days that I was there. I didn't include all of them in the book. I only picked the best ones for the book, but and I was just reading Irish poets, and then picking out lines, and then I would write, and let the environment kind of dictate how the poems went, as well as the Irish poets. They have a certain sensibility too, as a group. They're all different, but yeah, Matthew Sweeney is one of my favorite Irish poets. Does that answer your question there, Mitch?
Yeah, it does. That was great. Like, I kind of felt like I went along for a ride there. Like I was watching.
You were there, yeah.
Film. I'm envisioning Ireland, and like there's a lot there that we could unpack if this were a longer show. Like the whole notion of how, I mean, obviously culture infuses one's writing, but like Ireland being kind of a smaller locale, and so kind of tightly knit in some ways. I think is really a lot of what's going on there, and that it may not be true. It's certainly not true in the US, like maybe for certain states or areas, but like we're
For cities.
yeah, exactly. Neighborhoods even,
Yeah.
right? Like we're so kind of spread out that you don't get the same thing. So yeah, that's interesting. And,
Yeah, what we
I was
wanted,
kind of thinking as you were talking, like where would other places in the globe be that you could have kind of such a similar dense concentration of incredible poets and writers? And
yeah,
certainly have to be some, but there wouldn't be many.
yeah, right. I mean, the whole idea, we didn't go there to visit and travel. We stayed in this one cottage. It was out in the, rural area. And we wanted to become like citizens
Yeah.
as much as we could, and just stay in our little spot, not go see the Cliffs of Moher or, all these other places that you could go to. And that just worked out beautifully for us. We both loved it. In fact, we said, let's do this again. Let's go, to Scotland. Let's go wherever, any place, and just stay in one spot, one little town or one city, one cabin, one house for 30 days and try to become just regular people in that area.
It's not only is it the best way to get to know an area, but it's also, this is a huge shout out for the value of travel in the first place, right? Like 42 poems in 30 days, like it rejuvenates you, and it's, it freshens your whole worldview. So I'm glad you had that experience, and I'm jealous, and it's a great idea to do it other places.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And we feel so lucky to have had the opportunity, and, especially if my sabbatical had been a year later, it would have been during COVID, and I wouldn't have been able to go.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just so lucky in so many ways.
Well, a little bit of serendipity there.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, David, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We do need to wrap it up, but this has been a pleasure on many levels. Again, as a former student, it's been a lot of fun, but also just as a fellow lover of words. Thank you for sharing your work with us, and it's been fantastic. Thanks again.
Keep writing and keep doing what you're doing. You're obviously doing something to be successful.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I remember you as a student. I don't remember everybody as students, but I remember you.
I mean, if I recall, one of my Jackass poems came out of your class. So like whenever somebody added, effectively uses Jackass in a poem, you stick out the memory, right?
Sure.
All right. Thank you, David. And viewers, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.